In Dead by Daylight, as most people know, each character has their own 3 teachable perks, and today I'm going to be choosing the best one for all of the survivors in the game. To start off, we have Dwight, and for him, I'd pick Prove Thyself. This perk increases repair speed for you and nearby teammates while working on a generator together. It's a pretty simple perk, but it can be really helpful, especially when you get stuck in a 3-gen, and on top of that, it gives you extra blood points while you're cooperating with other people. Next up is Meg, and her best perk is pretty easily Sprint Burst. This perk gives you 150% movement speed for 3 seconds when you start sprinting. It's probably the most basic exhaustion perk, but in some ways that's a good thing because it's very easy to activate. There's other perks like Dead Hard where you have to be injured to use it, or Balanced Landing where you have to find a good spot to drop from to use it. But for Sprint Burst, you just use it as soon as you start sprinting. For Claudette, I'd say her best perk is Self Care, which allows you to heal yourself without a medkit, but at 50% of the normal rate. I know a lot of people hate on the perk because it wastes a lot of time, but if it's used right, it can be very valuable. Sometimes you can't find any teammates nearby, and using self-care would be your best option. Now instead of trying to look for somebody, you can just get straight into healing yourself, and now no one else has to stop what they're doing to heal you. Now for Jake, his best perk is Iron Will. Although I really like Saboteur, Iron Will is easily one of the best stealth perks in the game, because it completely hides all grunts of pain while you're injured, at least if you have it at tier 3. This perk makes a huge difference because it's basically impossible to hide from a nearby killer if you're constantly crying in pain. And the great part about it is that it's always active while you're injured. There's some other perks that do a similar thing, but they only activate for a short amount of time. For Nia, I was initially thinking Balanced Landing, but I realized that Streetwise is a really underrated perk because it basically gives you 25% extra charges on your items and gives the same effect to nearby teammates. Those extra charges can make a huge difference, especially if you're running a really good item, but even if you're not, you might still get an extra use out of your medkit because of it. Bills was a pretty tough choice between Borrowed Time and Unbreakable, but I decided to go with Borrowed Time because Unbreakable is only beneficial if the killer leaves you on the ground after you get knocked. I'm sure everyone already knows what it does, but I'll explain it anyway for anyone who doesn't. With this perk, any teammate that you get off the hook will have endurance for 12 seconds, which means that if they get hit within that 12 seconds, they won't go down. It's a great way to stop tunneling because it encourages the killer to go for you instead of your teammate who just got off the hook. And even if they do target them, they still will have a harder time catching up to them. For David King, his best perk is easily No Mither. Yeah, obviously I'm just kidding, his best perk is Dead Hard. It's one of the most popular perks in the game and there's good reason for that. It might be one of the hardest exhaustion perks to use, but if you have good timing with it, it can make a huge difference. It makes you immune to damage for a second, and if you use that to your advantage, you can make it to a pallet and evade the killer for much longer than you ever would have without it. Lori pretty much only has one good perk, but that perk is Decisive Strike, which is also one of the most popular perks in the game. If the killer goes to pick you up within 60 seconds of you getting off the hook, you're able to stun them for 5 seconds if you're able to hit a skill check. This perk is a great way to stop tunneling, but it does have some flaws. One of those being that after you get off the hook, you can't work on a generator or cleanse a totem or else the perk will deactivate. Also, the perk doesn't really do anything unless you get tunneled, so in some games it won't really benefit you at all. Ace's perks may seem pretty bad at first glance, but I actually think Open Handed is pretty good. It increases all aura reading abilities by 16 meters for the whole team. Now 16 meters might not seem like much, but when you combine it with a perk like Kindred or Bond, that actually makes a pretty big difference. For Fang Min, it was a bit of a tough choice between Alert and Life, but I had to go with Life because it's pretty much my favorite exhaustion perk in the game. Of course, it gives you 150% extra movement speed for 3 seconds after you fast forward a window. The thing that I love about it is that it's easy to activate, but it will pretty much only activate in a chase, unlike a perk like Sprint Burst. Detective Tap has 3 pretty good perks, but I think Detective's Hunch is much better than the other 2. It allows you to see the auras of chests, generators, and totems within a 64 meter range after you finish a generator, or your teammates do, it doesn't matter. This perk is great mostly for finding totems because it has such a big range, but it's also nice because after you finish a generator, you can easily find the next one to work on. Kate's perks aren't the best in my opinion, but I still feel like Dance With Me is pretty good. Hide your scratch marks for 3 seconds after fast forward. This perk can really trick the killer if they're not expecting it, although it really only works if you're able to break line of sight. One way to increase your chance of doing that is by combining this perk with Life, which will also activate whenever you vault the window, and that allows you to gain more distance while the scratch marks are still hidden. Jeff's perks are all pretty good in their own way, but I'd say his best is Aftercare. With it, anytime you heal or unhook someone, or they do the same for you, you're able to see each other's auras. It's always valuable information to know where your teammates are, especially when someone needs to heal, or if you just want to take a protection hit for somebody. The only downside to the perk is that it gets reset after you get put on the hook, meaning that you won't see anyone's aura until you heal or unhook each other again. Overall, it's still a useful perk that can benefit the whole team. It was a pretty easy pick for Jane because 2 of her perks are pretty useless, but Head On is pretty good. It allows you to stun the killer for 3 seconds after jumping out of a locker, but it makes you exhausted for 40 seconds. This doesn't even compare to some of the other exhaustion perks, but it's still probably one of the most fun ones to use. Also, this perk helped me finish the challenge rather than stun the killer a bunch of times, so I guess it's good for that. For Nancy, I like Inner Strength the best. This perk allows you to heal yourself by hiding in a locker after you cleanse a totem. This perk's great because it allows you to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You're able to cleanse a totem, and you get to heal yourself for free. You also don't really need a medkit when you're running this perk, so you can bring a toolbox or a flashlight without having to worry about healing. Steve's best perk would have to be Renewal. I don't see this perk run too often, but it doesn't seem too bad. After getting off the hook, it gives you the broken status effect for 20 seconds, but after those 20 seconds are up, you get healed instantly. Normal heal would take 16 seconds, so you have to wait a bit longer to get healed up, but you can get straight into completing objectives, and so can your teammate who just got you off the hook. Yui's best perk was a pretty easy choice. I went with Any Means Necessary. This perk allows you to pick up pallets that the killer never broke, and it has a 100-second cooldown. You can't underestimate the value of getting more use out of pallets, and another nice thing about the perk is that you get to see the auras of dropped pallets, which, well, first of all lets you pick them up, but also tells you where the killer is if you see one of them disappear. Felix's best perk is definitely Built to Last, which lets you repair a fully depleted item back to 99% after hiding in a locker for 12 seconds. And each time you use this, it'll go down by 33%, so the next one will be 66, and then so on. As long as you've got an item that has a decent amount of charges, I can't see you running out of uses on it. It's basically like Streetwise, but 10 times better. Now for Elodie, I'd say her best perk is Deception, which creates a fake noise notification when you interact with a locker while running, and this hides your scratch marks for the next 3 seconds. And if you use this right, this could be a great way to lose the killer, especially because I don't see it used often and they probably won't be ready for it. The only perk I really like for Yunjin is Fast Track, so that one runs pretty easily. This gives you 3 stacks each time a teammate gets hooked, and for each stack you currently have, you get an extra 1% generator progress next time you hit a great skill check on a generator. This will also reset your stacks back to 0. The extra 1% generator progress might not seem like a lot, but if I did the math right, that'll save you a little over a second for each stack that you use, and that can make a pretty big difference throughout the game. For Yuichi, hopefully I said his name right, I'd say his best perk is Parental Guidance, which hides your scratch marks for 7 seconds after stunning the killer in any way. If you're in the right spot, you can easily break line of sight within that time and find a place to hide, making this a great way to lose the killer. Next up is Jonah, and I would have to say his best one is Overcome, which makes you speed boost from getting injured 2 seconds longer, but it makes you exhausted. It's definitely not the best exhaustion perk in the game because if you get insta down it won't do anything, but it's certainly still useful. For Leon, I'd have to pick Flashbang, which lets you of course create a flashbang after completing 50% generated progress. These are basically the same as the firecrackers that we get during events, and they can be used to blind the killer during chase or to save a teammate. The advantage to this perk though is that you can craft as many as you want throughout the match, while the firecracker is only a one-time use. Now for Jill, Counterforce is easily her best perk. This allows you to cleanse totems 20% faster. Also, when you cleanse a totem, you see the aura of the furthest totem for 4 seconds, and gain 20% more cleansing speed for each one you get rid of. This is probably the best perk for finding totems in the game, because once you get rid of one, you can pretty much find all of them. Cheryl's best perk is Soul Guard, which gives you endurance after recovering from the dying state, and allows you to pick yourself up while cursed by any hex. This can make for some really clutch plays late game, and since a lot of killers run hexes, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to pick yourself up. Serena's perks aren't great in my opinion, but for the people is a pretty decent one. It lets you transfer health state to a teammate, meaning that if they're injured, they heal instantly, but then you become injured. I personally don't have it, but while I was playing as killer, I've seen some people pull off some really good plays at the X game with this one. Ash doesn't have the best perks either, but Flip Flop is a pretty fun one. This transfers half of your recovery progress to your wiggling progress whenever the killer picks you up. It's not great on its own, but if you combine it with Power Struggle, you're able to just crawl under a pallet, and assuming that the killer leaves you on the floor for long enough, you could just stun them as soon as they pick you up. Next up is Adam. His best perk would have to be Deliverance, which allows you to get yourself off the hook if you've already rescued a teammate off the hook. This comes at the expense of being broken for 60 seconds. Though the perk can come in clutch sometimes, it won't do much in other games because you're either the first one to be hooked, or a teammate could have easily saved you and now you're just broken for no reason. Finally, we have Quentin, and for him, I'd pick Vigil. This makes you and nearby teammates recover 30% faster for pretty much all status effects. The best part of the perk is recovering from exhaustion, but of course getting rid of other effects like Exposed or Oblivious is great too. Alright, so that's all the survivors in the game. Let me know which ones you agreed with, and maybe something you had a different opinion on. Anyway, that's all, and I'll see you guys in the next one.